listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the Awards Watch Podcast, episode 169. It's going to be a fun episode. I am your executive editor, Ryan McQuade. Joining me today is your editor-in-chief, Erik Anderson.
Hello.
And Josh Parham.
Hello, hello.
And I should probably do hello. That's just the progressions.
We need a third.
We need a third to really harmonize there. Today we are here to talk about one of the first bigger titles released of the year, and that is M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. We're going to talk a little bit about Shyamalan himself. We'll talk about the film in full detail, so there will be spoilers. So if you have not seen Knock at the Cabin, I don't know what to tell you, but if you're that kind of person that wants to hear full spoilers to a movie before seeing it, then you're in the right place. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of our favorite twist endings. M. Night Shyamalan is notorious for a twist ending. It's kind of his brand. And then we'll get you out of here in a decent amount of time. How's everybody's week? Erik, your week good? Was it good?
It was 7 days.
Okay.
It's a week.
All right. Josh, same?
Yeah, it felt longer, but we made it through.
All right. Well, speaking of things that felt longer than they usually were, Knock at the Cabin. Let's get right into it. M. Night Shyamalan's latest film kind of set up the premise here a little bit. It's about a family of three that are vacationing at a remote cabin, but they are suddenly held hostage by four strangers who demand they sacrifice one of their own to avert the apocalypse. Obviously, M. Night Shyamalan has directed the film. Stars Dave Bautista, Jonathan Groff, Ben Aldridge, Rupert Grint, Abby Quinn, a bunch of other people. Josh, you wrote the review of this movie up on our website, and you did a great job, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So what did you... Obviously, everybody can go read your review, but what did you think of Knock at the Cabin? And what do you think of Shyamalan in general? I feel like he's getting a resurgence of appreciation over the last couple of years, especially with his last couple of movies that have come out. There were a lot of films in between, though, that were not very good, but obviously his career started off as good as anybody's career could. So what do you think about old M. Night?
Well, I think just sort of on the subject of Shyamalan in general, obviously those first early movies I'm a big fan of, like most people are. I think Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs. I think that particular run right there is just really, really excellent. Mm-hmm. And I know there's Defenders of the Village. I'm not particularly one of them, but I also haven't seen that movie in a very long time, so I should revisit it. But yeah, after that, it gets a little bumpy, to say to be kind. I think, yeah, The Happening is like one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and it gets pretty rough there. And I think around the time of The Visit is when his resurgence starts to happen. And to be honest, I still think those movies aren't particularly great, but they're more competent than what came before. And so I feel like people kind of grade on a curve a little bit. I have a significant issue still with a lot of the recent movies, but they are certainly better than a lot of what he's done previously. And weirdly, I think A Knock at the Cabin might be in some ways the best movie of this current bunch, but it's still very flawed. And it's one of those movies where in the moment I was having fun with it, but still frustrated by it. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like it just doesn't really have anything interesting to say, really anything at all to say. And despite, I think, some good filmmaking and some good performances, the narrative is just so empty to me that is the thing that is my biggest frustration with it. So it's not bad. In fact, I think overall I do lean positive on it, but it's a very kind of hollow movie at the end of the day, which is pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Erik, you are the biggest M. Night Shyamalan fan that I know of. You are consistently touting The Last Airbender as one of the greatest achievements of cinema of the last decade. So I'm curious what you think of his latest film, Knock at the Cabin.
Yes, it's basically, anyone that knows me knows that is my brand.
Yep.
Clearly all the way. I'm kind of in the same boat as Josh. A little less complimentary to Knock at the Cabin maybe than he is. And I agree. I was going with it for quite a long time.
Mhm.
And I really like Ben Aldridge. I think the opening scene of the movie is absolutely chilling and really well set up. Bautista is exactly the right creepiness for it. And I liked the opening. I thought it set up really well. But then it just kind of it just really folds in on itself too early. It both takes too long to get to like the real action, and then at the same time can't really decide where its allegiances are, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Because by the time we really get there, it starts to feel like what's that meme of the worst person in the world made a good point, or whatever it is, that kind of meme. And that's kind of where it lands.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously we are talking spoiler alert, Bautista and his gang of weirdos are right. And but it thinks it's a much bigger moral challenge than it really ends up being. And I think we'll get into a little bit later about the ending and why I think it's horrible and an absolute no-win, no matter how they had gone.
Okay. I like M. Night Shyamalan. I'm just going to put my cards out on the table. I think that I am sort of in the camp that, and Josh is too, we kind of grew up with M. Night films. I mean, we all grew up around the sort of, Erik, you were, we don't need to talk about it. 1999 was big for M. Night Shyamalan because, obviously Sixth Sense became this phenomenon. He gets nominated, the film got nominated for Best Picture, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? Like it things like this rarely happen. And that Time magazine cover of M. Night Shyamalan, is he the next Spielberg after like one film, has really
that was his third.
Yeah, was it his first or was it his third?
It was his third.
Or it's like third,
it
but
wasn't
like
his first, but it was his
first mainstream big film to break through. But also, like, if you saw his films beforehand, it wasn't like
pretty rude to dismiss Wide Awake like that. Rosie O'Donnell, superstar.
I think we can pretty much dismiss that movie. It's pretty bad. But no, I think the thing about it is that unfairly he was given this label of, the next genius behind the camera, and his films were judged very harshly for a long time. I think Unbreakable was like that because of the fact that it had to follow Sixth Sense. I think Signs is incredible.
Unbreakable is his best film, so
I think Signs is his best film. But I don't think anyone can argue Unbreakable either. It's a really, really good film. And it's
a good 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yes. And then I like The Village. I know that it, I haven't seen it in a long time either, Josh, but I remember liking it more than hating it. But I felt the roughness of that film when it first came out, and but I leaned more positive than negative. And I think a lot of your sort of love or liking for that film hinders upon the fact that if you buy that ending and go in with that, or in some acting choices and different things. But then, yeah, I remember, and the other thing about these two is my dad took me to all the M. Night Shyamalan movies. We saw every single one of them. And unfortunately, we weren't able to go to Knock at the Cabin together because they canceled the screening this week because there were ice conditions on the roads here in San Antonio. It was ridiculous. So, but yeah, I remember The Happening. That was an experience. Erik and I were talking. Erik and I were talking about it this week. I feel like halfway through, he just decided to make a comedy and switch from it being a horror movie.
My theory is that it was a prank on Mark Wahlberg the whole time, and he's the only one that didn't know it.
Honestly, I'd be for that.
Justice for Betty Buckley, though. Always.
Yeah. Lady in the Water is a movie. It exists.
Is it? I mean, you could maybe even argue that.
It came out in theaters. People saw it. I saw it.
I don't know. It could just be like the Mandela effect. No.
I don't hate it as people do, but I also don't like it. You know what I mean? It's not a movie I'm going back to. I get that he was trying to make a movie for his kids, and it's like, whatever. Yeah, well, it's fine. Whatever. You can do whatever you want. Last Airbender, that's whoa. And After Earth, terrible. Worst movie of his career.
Really
That's
bad. I mean, it's
really
pretty bad when Will Smith can outact his son and he never leaves the chair.
I mean, the power of Will Smith, right?
Yeah.
It is very strange when you look at the succession of these films, because I mean, while anybody can rank them however they want, it's very realistic to look at them in a list and be able to rank them in order of good to bad, in order of when they came out.
Mm-hmm.
You really can do that almost with like absolute precision.
Up until I think The Visit, which Josh mentioned, which is like, that's a movie, you know, I felt like for that movie in particular, yes, he's doing the found footage gimmick, but he stripped things kind of down. He didn't go crazy over the top. The twist was fine. Performances are good. You know, it was a solid film. Then, you know, he has, was it Split come out? Super surprised that was in the Unbreakable sort of universe. Has that in Glass back to back. I'm mixed on those movies. I don't think they're terrible, but I don't think they're great.
They're
unnecessary.
Yeah, but Old, I'm gonna just tell you this. I love Old rules. And it's because I feel like that ambition meets the craziness, meets the just wild choices, everything in that movie. I was thinking a lot about Old while I was watching Knock at the Cabin, because I was sitting there going, there are no wild character swings like Mid-Sized Sedan, or some of the time lapses in age, or random dialogue that kind of makes them campy, fun times at the theater with M. Night Shyamalan. And I just enjoyed that. Yes, the ending is preposterous, but it's like, of course it's preposterous. How are you going to end this movie otherwise? This whole premise is preposterous. And when I watched Knock at the Cabin, I sat there and I kind of just was like, this is so bland. This is, it felt like as if he got to make Old on his own dime. Like they were like, you can have Old, but you got to make this movie too. Like afterwards, you got to make this. This is a kind of a 1-for-1 situation, because this is a very popular book and everything. And it feels like a book that is trying to make an M. Night Shyamalan movie. So of course, they hand him off the material. I think that Eric's right. Opening scene, great. It's just between two characters, establishing sort of the relationships and the rules to the film a little bit as well. It's very tense. And Dave Bautista is incredible in this movie. I think he's fantastic. I think he's like I was saying it to somebody this week. He's like an A24 neon solo film away from getting like love from the industry. A bit like, oh my God, I didn't know this wrestler could really act. You know what I mean? And
he is a little one note in this. He's good, but he doesn't leave that sort of,
he's not asked to,
tatted guy kind of look and demeanor. He doesn't.
True, but I think there's a little bit more gentle giant to him than like a hard,
but not like
character that he's played before. You know?
I don't know. Tell me about the rabbits, George.
Wow, a little. I guess so.
Go quite that far.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that far.
Well,
right?
I mean,
that's just such a weird phrase.
I don't think that like the writing to the character is that deep, and I always feel like that is a big hindrance of how good an actor can be in a role. But I did like his general presence of being intimidating, but also kind of warm and inviting at the same time. I think that he handled that dichotomy really well, and it made me very captivated whenever he was on screen.
Yeah, he has a presence to him, which is not to be said for the other characters in this damn movie, because everyone else is basically built out of the wood from the cabin. You know what I mean? Like they're bad.
Okay, but 3 of them are intentionally so. I think Ben Aldridge is fantastic.
I think he's awful in this movie. I truly think.
I think you're awful in this podcast.
I think Jonathan Groff has to be stopped. I think the little girl's good. The little girl's really good, you know, especially in those scenes with Bautista.
In the opening scene, yes.
Yes.
Less so.
I think Rupert Grint is making choices.
I think Rupert Grint did this as a favor.
Yeah, I think so. He's like, you gave me servant, I'll do this. You know what I mean?
Pretty clear.
And then I think that the problem this movie has is a lot of what you were talking about, Erik, and I kind of want to get into it a little bit, is the film's just heavy-handed message. It is such it's almost like it's so heavy-handed that it's just like it doesn't even know what it's trying to say at times. It's also like it's nothing original, it's nothing new. It doesn't feel like M. Night Shyamalan. It feels like,
well, there's 3 writers on it, so
yeah,
and it does actually kind of feel like that. It is a funny era of gays in the apocalypse between The Last of Us and Knock at the Cabin. It's kind of wild, and it's a weird place to be, and you know, in some ways a good thing.
Yeah, I will say this though, as opposed to like The Last of Us getting like review bombed on IMDb, a C cinema score for an M. Night Shyamalan movie is par for the course. To be fair, it didn't matter if this was a straight or gay couple. Like, people have now become extremely in the middle when it comes to M. Night Shyamalan movies, but that's kind of the beauty of him as a filmmaker, because he's one of the only filmmakers left that he gets to make his movie. We have a discussion on it. We're doing a podcast and talking about it. Like, he moves the needle, whether people like his movies or not. Like, he's kind of weirdly in that club, and he's earned it. I don't know if he's earned it well, actually, but
yeah, and it's number 1 at the box office this week after.
Did it knock off Avatar?
That flop Avatar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my god.
It and 80 for Brady both knocked down Avatar.
Wow. Man.
So.
Yeah, just beating up old ladies just left and right. So rude.
Rude. I think Big Jim would be okay with that.
Yeah,
I'm sure. But you know, you mentioned about how you think that the movie is sort of heavy-handed with its messaging, and I can see that, but I think also the movie is very empty in terms of what it actually wants to say. So yeah, it's like you could say it's heavy-handed, but only if you're like looking for that messaging. And yeah, I call it the Clint Eastwood problem, which is when you have nothing to say in your movie, you just have to fill in the blanks, and then most of it looks bad. But I don't think the movie's intentionally pointing to that, but it doesn't give you an alternative either. So it just makes it seem like, I guess the movie is saying that the gays got to kill themselves in order to stop the end of the world. And
it's wild. It's wild.
I don't think the movie is actually saying that, but it doesn't really give you the ambiguity to really poke at that theme more, and that's a problem. So it's like, I guess that's what it's saying at the end of the day.
Yeah, Josh, I think the thing about it for the heavy-handed is, for me, it's the idea of faith, and the idea of, if you're a believer or non-believer, is pushed to its limits. I think that's the sort of, you know, that's what it felt like the message was for me. And maybe I'm wrong, but it felt like the religious sort of, you know, pushback, but especially from Ben Aldridge's character, who was like, fuck it, I don't believe any of this shit. And like, they're showing him, and like they're trying to like break it down and everything. And it becomes like all that. Like, to me, I'm just like, that's not what I thought this movie was going to be at all. Like, this is like, he is just kind of pushing it further and further. The you know, whether you believe it, I get that you have to have pushback of whether you believe that these 4 random people are going to walk into your life and everything. But then there is also a reveal with like a connection between Rupert Grint's character with Ben Aldridge's character too, which I was like, I sat there and I went, what the hell is this? Like, what?
I mean, it was both a great fake out and really just
hollow.
One of the most anti-gay elements of the whole movie. Not the bar beating that he got, not that, but that the only thing that Aldridge's character was right about was that. And there's just something kind of insidious about it.
Yeah.
I did not take away quite the same conservative thing that a lot of people online really were so against. It's, they talk about being in a meeting in a forum, of a bunch of fucking lunatics together. It's like, all right, it's a
Reddit.
That tracks.
Yeah.
It's Reddit and 4chan and all that stuff. But it's obviously easy to make that metaphor. That's not that's not a huge leap by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, I almost want to just jump to the ending, because the main issue I have is that the ending completely defies the entire theme of Groff and Aldridge's mantra and characters from the beginning, the always together. It absolutely, completely destroys it. And it's like, why would you do that? Why? It doesn't make sense. Now, the original book ending in 2023, I don't think they could have done either, because you already have these two gay white guys adopting this Chinese girl. And, again, this is a spoiler-filled podcast. In the book, the girl dies. They don't kill her. She dies accidentally. I don't think that you could, in this era of scrutiny, have that ending. It would be just destroyed and ugly, and it might even look more anti-gay in a way. So I think Shyamalan and his writers absolutely wrote themselves into a corner by even trying to adapt this. There just wasn't really a way to do it other than a happy ending with Aldridge and Groff.
I mean,
or some more ambiguity at the end. I think, like, we reached the end of the movie and it's pretty clear that the apocalypse was happening and this is what they needed to do to stop it. And I was really hoping that there was more question about that, because it would have been far more interesting to hang that on the theme of faith and belief and whether or not you're going to take this leap or not. And instead the movie is just like, no, this happened. And it's like, okay, but then what does that really mean for a larger narrative? It just lands with a complete thud to me.
I think
that's the thing. Groff is the one that kind of finally takes that turn, but it's so late in the film
with no buildup. Really,
that's the seeds that is the seed that should have happened in the middle of the movie, during the second act. That gives us those real breadcrumbs that are the cornerstone of a story like this, and a thing that we can really look back to.
Honestly, I gotta say this. And I know that it would have been very tough for them to justify it. But I did what Erik kind of did. And I went, after I saw the film, and I immediately got on my phone and tried to find out what the twist ending or the book ending was. And I sat there and I went, for this film in particular, and for what M. Night Shyamalan usually does, he does have he's had films that question morality, and also has never shied away from having sort of controversy, maybe at one of his films, or having something interesting to say, and also ambiguity, like you're mentioning, Josh. The book ending would have been 100% probably better, at least the bones of it, because in the book,
it would have.
The book, the little girl gets shot on accident. And they say it doesn't count because they didn't decide she wasn't chosen. It would just happen by accident. So in a sense, it's only a 2-person choice at that point. And the book kind of ends with, did they make a choice? Does the world actually end? We don't really know. And it's up for the audience to decide, because it kind of leads you down the epiphanies or different things like that. And I think we always get on M. Night Shyamalan for making these crazy over-the-top endings, like Old, right? It's a perfect example of how are you going to get yourself out of a corner this time, M. Night? Oh, they're going to swim to the bottom of the reef, and it's all this research shit and all this other stuff. That's a wild, stupid ending that took me out of it. But yet when he's gone conventional and stripped back any, dare I say, just interesting things happening in the end of this movie, this is kind of what happens when we ask for, maybe you should dial it back a little bit. Because it felt like they did dial it back and we're told you can't really do that ending because you can't kill a child. You know what I mean?
Which I get.
Get that.
I'm not blaming them for not taking the path of, killing a kid in a mainstream movie.
No.
I understand. That's actually not the problem that I have with it. The more bigger issue is just when we get to the end, we don't get to a resolution that feels thematically satisfying. And I think you can arrive at that without having to kill the child.
No, but you could have turned it to maybe Jonathan Groff gets accidentally shot. And instead, then you're having to have probably even harder conversation of what happens in the end of the film between the two of them or something along those lines. Or you just don't have him have this religious epiphany there at the end that, like you're saying, Erik, doesn't justify their thought process throughout this entire film about I've seen the light now, and literally spelling out that they're the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Oh my God.
And which is some of the worst dialogue that M. Night's had in the last 5 films.
It was horrible because he treats it like it's one of his, like it's a Sixth Sense level. He's been dead all the time twist. And I'm like, really?
We've been seeing this the whole time. What are you talking about, dude?
Yeah.
It's really the only thing that's like that. That's in terms of kind of being a twist, and it's not.
No, and I believe from the little bit that I have been reading about what's in the book that the Jonathan Groff character was far more religious than what we see in the movie. That was something that was shown much earlier on, and that would have been useful to have in this adaptation.
That's exactly
to have him I don't know, if you wanted to go down this angle of, like you're mentioning, Josh, have him be a little bit in his past more religious, talk a little bit about, maybe he had to make a choice because he found love with Ben Aldridge and stepped away from the church, like many people in the LGBTQ community have had to do in their lives, stuff
but he's
like
still
that.
Spiritual at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And completely would have been nice to have seeded that into the narrative.
But to have a balance of the full, I don't believe any of this shit going on, to a door at least slightly open to the possibility that this is real. And it's never like that.
I will say this, that because of the lack of that with Groff's character, it was really funny to me that he becomes a believer after a massive head injury, because it reminded me of Lucas Haas in Everyone Says I Love You, who's this super staunch conservative kid. And then he goes to the hospital and he has a brain tumor and he has it removed, and then he's not. It's maybe unintentionally,
really
but
funny.
Fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going to make, commentaries about conservatism and religious faith, that was a much bigger metaphor than anything that Bautista and his horse people were doing.
Damn it, Erik. No, but I mean, and then I think the last 5 minutes of the film, after obviously the decision is made and everything, it just feels like you're just left on one. It feels like the ending is at the same diner as the end of Split, mind you. There's going to be some connection. It's going to be.
I
was waiting for. I was like,
M. Night universe.
Is this still in that universe? But then it just the needle drop, to just where it leaves you.
The 3 needle.
Well, drops. It's the same drop, but it's used 3 times. It's
and not earned at all.
It's not earned at all. And I also wasn't a fan of the flashback sequences in the film, because the only one that really paid off was the gun and how they get the gun in the car, and why Ben Aldridge's character has the gun. And it's because of this event that happened at a bar. Rupert Grint's character, who we don't see, but obviously is then revealed when he finally finds the wallet, which is so stupid. It was so stupid. I sat there, I was like, of course it's him. Like, I know what Rupert Grint sounds like and looks like. It's like the only character in the film with red hair, and like right off of camera he's got red hair. It's ridiculous. And then the sort of, he's turning into like, I don't know, Batman, when he's like getting the glass out and he's at the gym looking full Lydia Tarr, and then he's buying the gun, and it's in and everything. And I was like, okay, that actually makes sense, because you're like building up as to why this person, one, isn't trustworthy, two, needs to have this weapon, and everything. But the rest of them, like the adoption, one, the one with his family, with Ben, I think it's actually is it Ben Aldridge's family?
Parents.
Yeah. And everything, like all these they're just unnecessary fluff. Because
I don't think so. I don't think
to
it's
your credit, Josh, they could have added a little bit more to, like, there could have been a conversation about religion there, or there could have been a conversation about like what's going on, instead of, it's like, yeah, they drove for 3 hours and they stayed for like 5 minutes or whatever. You know what I mean? Or
I think they were trying to thread the needle of not taking you away from the current action too much, which I agree with, because too much time in these flashbacks, or even the flash forward, would do that. So I do think they were trying really hard to strike that balance of not pulling you out of what was the tension of what was happening. But that there were really hard edits and cuts.
Yeah,
that did exactly that. It did cut that tension so definitively that you're jerked out of it and then kind of thrust back in it, but not in a way that feels, adventurous
or organic. I do understand like the perspective that cutting away from the cabin too much would maybe deflate that tension, but I think that if we had at least more time to acclimate to these new situations, then like, okay, we're not at the cabin and with that tension anymore, but we're learning more about the characters, we're diving into the overall themes a little bit more, we're getting more context about why we are at this cabin and what maybe we're dealing with here. I think that would at least justify it better, that okay, we're not in that tension anymore, but we're learning more about the situation, so that when we come back we have more context, and now the storytelling is more interesting.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah. No, for sure. All right. Do you guys have anything else to talk about with Knock at the Cabin? Any other complaints? Any other praises you want to mention? Because I do have one praise I want to say, is that while the writing of this movie is not great and the performances are all over the place and messaging and whatnot, I still think M. Night Shyamalan's use of the camera, especially on close-ups, in particular, the stuff in the woods, I love what he does. I mean, it goes back to some of the sequences in the village that I find truly haunting, where he just knows how to shoot a camera in a woods, and like how making like something as like the outdoors feel extremely uncomfortable, at least. And like when you sort of see Dave Bautista coming out of those trees, and then you see the others coming around the trail and things of that nature, you have the sense, I think, from the get-go, he just knows how to block, and he knows how to, he's really great at close-ups, sort of underrated person when it comes to that. So I just think as a director, he's really good at that. As a writer, it's still always a coin toss. But do you guys have anything else that you want to?
No, the filmmaking is overall pretty good here. I definitely agree that the cinematography, one of them is Yarn Blanchke, who is the guy who works with Robert Eggers, Lighthouse and Northman. So I think you can definitely tell that he's working with a really accomplished cinematographer, because like some of the shots in Old are mind-boggling. I'm still trying to figure out why what is going on with the shots of that movie. But this one is very good. And yeah, those close-ups I think are really great. I'm very appreciative of all the close-ups of Ben Aldridge in the movie.
Fair.
Which I will also say, I don't think that I did not hear that slander from you, Ryan, about Ben Aldridge in this movie.
Sorry, he's not good.
Great in this film. I will hear nothing else.
Okay. I'm sorry, Josh.
He's giving a really great performance in the movie, maybe the best one in the film.
Ooh. Now we're going a little far.
No, best. I think between him and Bautista, it's like, okay, I think I would go back and forth between the two of them. But Shyamalan has actually always been, I think, really good with his relationship with actors. He doesn't always get the best performance out of them, but he does sound like somebody who likes working with actors. And I do think that element is for the most part, pretty good here. They aren't given as much awkward dialogue like a lot of his other movies tend to give his actors. So, like, at the end of the day, I did have some fun with the movie overall, but it's not really one that I would defend all that much. And yeah, as I think about it more, the less I like it. But I think it's one of those things where it kind of works in the moment as long as you then don't think about it too much afterwards.
Yeah. Those opening credits, like the opening credits themselves were pretty good too. I like those opening credits. I wish.
Yeah, music was great too. I like the score a lot.
Music was good. Yeah. Bill, he's got to, I mean, I hate saying this because this is going to make me sound like that kind of person, but like this was very Rope. This was very Hitchcock in a sense. It's this one location sort of things, and he's very influenced by Hitchcock a lot, and especially with twist endings and things like that.
More like
he's
Twilight Zone to me though, which
and Twilight Zone
as well.
Too. Yeah, I mean, I like
this is more Twine than Rope.
Yeah.
Well, there's no sincerity to it. And that's what I kind of found about this movie that was sort of the most baffling, is that even in Shyamalan's movies that you may hate, he's still very sincere with his storytelling. Like he is still a very kind of heartfelt guy, and he believes in the kind of basic goodness of what's happening and what the characters are going through. And I didn't feel that here. It just felt so perfunctory, like we're just watching scenes happen and we reach the conclusion and that's it. And that's what felt so odd about it, is that for as well as it was sort of made from the filmmaking side, it was kind of missing a heart weirdly, which even in something as terrible as like Lady in the Water, that is still a very sincere movie, you know,
very sentimental. You know what I mean?
And to a fault, some would say, but at least it has an identity to it that I really didn't feel with this one. It felt very work for hire, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, like that's why I was saying earlier. I was like, this feels like you can get the budget and money for Old and do that crazy goddamn movie, but you have to make this one next. And it just feels like on the page a perfect movie for him to make, right? The sort of construction of it, the story. No, I mean, it really is like, if I made a movie about the end, like 4 people showing up at a cabin, end of the world sort of situation, and the premise of somebody in this family has to kill themselves, otherwise the world ends. I'm like, oh, M. Night Shyamalan's directing that movie, huh? And so it feels very much like that. The problem is that it doesn't have, like you're mentioning, Josh, it doesn't have the things that make an M. Night Shyamalan movie specifically an M. Night Shyamalan movie. It has the bones of that, but it doesn't have the spirit. It doesn't have the sentimentality. It doesn't have the audaciousness. It doesn't have the random choices that, whether we like it or not, are unique to him and make his movies worth having those sort of tug and pull conversations. This is a very dry movie. And yeah, I think that the one person I was rooting for, weirdly enough, because that's at least what you can say about his movies, you have somebody to root for, is I was actually rooting for Dave Bautista, which was weird because I'm like, I shouldn't be rooting for the end of the world. I should be rooting for one of these people to make this very tough decision. It's a very cold movie at times, and it's kind of deliberate.
Pretty homophobic, Ryan. Pretty homophobic there. But sure.
I'm just saying those 2 characters did not get enough attention, enough to have me invested as an audience member for what is supposed to be an ultimate decision made by these characters. And they're also not the first characters you're introduced to. You're introduced to this little girl who is completely sidetracked in the second half of this film, and Dave Bautista. That's the first adult you meet in the film. So from the get-go, I attached to him. You know what I mean? Because I was like, I kind of believed it
because he says Daddy Erik in it.
There you go.
Like, all right, I'm going to do spell it right. Whatever you want to say. Do you need me to kill my husband and my kid? I'll shoot them both.
They also didn't spell it right, though, Erik, to be fair.
You know, they did. It was an incorrect spelling, which is why Jonathan Groff deserved to die. So,
Erik, anything else for you that you want to add?
No, that was actually going to be my final statement on the
Perfect. Well, Knock at the Cabin, it's in theaters right now. I can't wait to see what M. Night does next. I feel like I said this earlier, he's one of those directors that may not like all this stuff, but he's kind of weirdly got a blank check. And also he's making movies that are not too expensive.
He's funding his movies himself. He's not getting a blank check.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. And they're making a bank load of money because they're always really great return on investments now. So
yeah, they're like under $20 million.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty smart. All right. Well, speaking of M. Night Shyamalan, I wanted to kind of have a general conversation because I feel like he's one of the only directors still that tries to repeatedly do a twist ending, or twist endings are really also fun because of the fact that they can cross over genres, and they also are really great for audiences too. And we don't really get to see a lot of them land particularly well, but the ones that do land are the best. So do you guys, Erik, I guess we'll start with you. Do you guys have any favorite twist endings? And you can say what they are because, you know, unless it's a movie that it's still under embargo, and when you want to break that on air, Erik, but you know,
that would be so brutal and mean. But no, I mean, yeah, we've talked about Shyamalan already, and this is kind of his brand. But I mean, Christopher Nolan and David Fincher too are really, really about these kind of like twisty ends, and you know, I guess it's maybe important to define how we're defining a twist ending. Is it something like, you know, Kaiser Soze at the end of Usual Suspects, or is it just like this is an ending that it could have been, it's just really cool and different? It's not like a big surprise.
Well, I think
both of them got quite a bit.
Yeah. I guess
I think when you're talking about what, go ahead.
I guess it's more like you didn't see it coming rather than like, oh, that ending could have been that, you know, because like some films you see when they come out, they have like alternative endings and you're like, no, I don't want that. I just, you know, I guess the best case scenario is something like a Sixth Sense or whatever, where you're watching a whole movie and you're thinking it's going down one way, and then the movie does a twist at the end, and that's the beauty of that film. It
always has to earn it, though. It always has to earn it.
Yep, but it recontextualizes everything that you saw.
You never saw this coming because we never established it, loser.
Yeah, it can't be like Serenity. You remember Serenity?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Stupid and fun and campy, but absolutely
the most. And then when you think about Serenity, which is a movie with Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, takes place on like this remote island or whatever, and then you find out it's inside this video game, right? It's like, yeah, it's so stupid. It's one
created
of the dumbest
by his son because his father was killed.
Yeah, and this is like his way to like get his dad to.
It was actually like a way for the son to kind of have sex with his mom. It was weird.
Yeah, or also too for like him to cope with his dad's loss as well too.
Yeah,
and then like
bizarre movie.
But then he kills his like stepfather at the end, right? Doesn't he go to prison?
Yeah,
like, right at the end, because like, you know, he gets the courage to finally stand up to his abuser. It is a wild movie. It
really is.
I'm surprised. Yeah. I'm surprised that like
it's weird that we never talked about A Cabin in the Woods in all of this conversation, and that movie, which is its own kind of like alt universe of this.
Yeah, it's like a subversion of expectations in that movie too.
It's kind of the same thing, and also uses, you know, the same type of tropes as the people in it, you know, being and whatever. Anyway,
no, I love that movie, Erik. I mean, like it's also, it's kind of like what a Tarantino movie would do if it was a horror film, and it sort of has those, like, it's got the humor of the Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins characters in there, but then it's also a commentary on the horror genre at the time, of just like the disposableness of slasher films and reboots and all these different things, and the originality's gone.
In a post Scream and a post Sixth Sense world, that's what we were left with for like 15, almost 20 years of these kind of like copycats. And actually, you know, same year as Sixth Sense, the Blair Witch and found footage stuff. But okay, going back to like really good twist ending things, and I guess since I already mentioned Nolan, The Prestige is probably a great example of it. A really, really, really good, earned and just really, really good.
I recently rewatched that movie.
I think Carnival Souls. There's, I mean, honestly, I think The Village is pretty cool in doing that, and it was so funny thinking about it for this that I'm like, oh my god, this is like women talking, but a horror movie. Women talking does like the same thing. Did you think this was 1850? Nope.
And then cheer up, sleep.
2010.
Yeah.
Fuck. I was just like, holy shit. Yeah. So hi, cinematic parallels. Chinatown, obviously. Atonement.
Oh God, Atonement.
I think that's a great example of it without it being like
gotcha.
Nolan, Shyamalan, gotcha. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good gotcha.
I hate God.
It's a good gotcha because it is the unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
It's a very good trope to have if you do it really, really, really well. And Atonement does.
Yeah, that I remember watching Atonement in the theater back in 2007. I saw it the day of that Oscars because it was the last film I needed to see. And I just remember sitting in the theater when that ending happened. I went, fuck you. Movie. Good God. I think like that's the best thing too, is some of these is when you see them with an audience, you have an experience. Like I remember seeing you mentioned The Prestige. There was the same film that year with Edward Norton, The Illusionist, that came out that same year. And they both were like the dueling musician movies that had a twist ending, but like the Prestige,
Armageddon Deep Impact of
it. Exactly. They were, but like I actually I dislike that movie, but I thought The Prestige's film was just a much more interesting film because it wasn't made by a director for hire. But I mean, I think the first, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but like a twist ending is, or not even a twist, it's just a twist within the final act of a film is something like, Empire Strikes Back and Darth Vader. That's like clearly the one. Psycho, obviously. When I was a kid, Shawshank Redemption blew my mind, but then, you don't see that whole thing coming at all because you think he's going to kill himself, and then
you don't see that whole thing.
Yeah.
Coming?
Oh, good God. All right. All right, Josh. All right. Josh, do you have some on that note? Do you have some, Josh? Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
You could not resist. That's very fair.
Yeah, and it's sort of interesting because I do think that there are like two kinds of twists, as we mentioned. There's the just gotcha at the end where you didn't see it coming and it's a total surprise. And then there's the other ones that they happen and it recontextualizes the whole movie that you just saw. And for me, the latter is far more interesting. I always find that if you reach the end and it makes you think about everything that you saw previously in a different light, those are always going to be the more interesting kind of endings to me. And Nolan does a good job of that, as we said. The Usual Suspects we had also sort of mentioned is another one, a little bit clunky in my opinion, but it, still really good for what the genre is. This one, I feel like it's bending the rules maybe a little bit in terms of if it's like a twist in the normal sense, but it does definitely recontextualize the ending or the whole movie with the ending. And for me, that is Pain and Glory.
Oh,
like I said, it's not the conventional twist that you would think of.
I like that.
The last shot of that movie, I just was like blown away by, because it truly did make me see the entire movie in a completely different context and made me appreciate it so much more. And it really is one of the most memorable endings I've seen in a while to have that kind of effect on me. And I just would want to shout it out for this conversation because I really do think that's a great one.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That movie
I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, The Others. It's like, that's great. Dead.
Yeah.
Another one of those. But no, that's absolutely genius.
Yeah.
Josh.
No, The Others is great. But Pain and Glory, yeah, that's the best pick so far. Yeah, because what was crazy about when I first saw Pain and Glory, I was like, why is everybody talking about this ending? Like I didn't get it. It went by me so quick. And then I rewatched it and I went, oh, okay, now I get it. You know what I mean? I'm just slow. But no, that's because it then adds those like you're saying, Josh, those layers of like what you're seeing. And also just a wonderful film in general.
Oh, yeah, one of my favorites. Another one that's actually also like that, but on the much more schlockier side, is a movie that probably people don't even remember anymore. But I always remembered this ending because I saw this movie in theaters.
Okay.
It's a movie called A Perfect Getaway.
I know that movie. Yeah, Mila Jovovich, Steve Zahn. Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth, I think, is in an early Chris Hemsworth movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's very schlocky for sure. But that is definitely one where you are watching it and you think you're seeing one thing, and then like halfway through, or maybe three-quarters, it's been a while since I've seen it, it basically flips the perspective on you, and who you basically thought were the protagonists are not the protagonists. And then it forces you to reckon with everything you saw up until that point, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you could read it in that other direction. And that's another example of recontextualizing the movie that you saw before. And for such a disposable schlocky movie that came out years ago that nobody remembers, I give it credit for at least having that kind of twist in it and being memorable, at least to me, if I don't remember anything else from the movie.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in forever. I remember watching that movie like late night on like an HBO. Like those are always the best ones too. When you find it late at night, you don't see it coming. Like Identity is another movie.
Love Identity.
Like,
I love that movie.
That movie is so silly, schlocky.
Beyond hell.
It was on my list because schlocky as fuck.
But it's so fun.
It's so fun. And then, but it recontextualizes everything you see before. It's
and there's
like
two twists in that movie too.
Yeah, it's two twists, and you're just like, I could only take the one. Like, what are you doing here? Like, this is ridiculous.
Obviously, horror is a good genre to do this in.
Horror's an extraordinary genre to do this because you're already unsettled to begin with. So then when you take a twist and you're really just, if you're playing the audience already, you might as well play them the whole way. And I think of obviously M. Night's films like Signs and we mentioned The Village, but then Seven is a movie too, like the ending of Seven and what's in the box, and and all that stuff, and it's sort of a slow build, but you don't see that really coming, at least for me, until the end, and then it's very heartbreaking and it's very dark. Erik, you had some more on your list?
I mean, I had a lot, but I don't know. Can we talk about the Robert Pattinson movie where he's in the World Trade Center?
Remember me. Remember
that
me.
9/11.
That count? Because I think
that
it does.
That counts.
Surprise, bitch.
Yeah, absolutely counts.
9/11.
Exactly.
I think of.
I mean, that's usually one of the best unearned, twist endings, but it's certainly entertaining when it shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Well, it's so bad that you just can't help but laugh at it.
It's horrific.
Yeah.
What a choice.
Primal Fear. I remember watching that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And just, God, I was so angry when I watched that one. Obviously, another one too. Classic. It's classic from the standpoint of two ways you want to look at it. So the Planet of the Apes ending is, in the original, it's fantastic. You don't see it coming. It ends on that note. You're left with your mouth open. You got Don Draper and his kid wanting to watch it all over again, kind of thing. And then what Tim Burton does is just put him in jail forever.
Which is actually closer to the book, though.
Yeah.
It should be said.
That's
the ending for the 2001 remake is closer to the book. And the 68 version is, Rod Serling was one of the co-writers. That is a total Twilight Zone twist ending to the first one. And it is better. And yeah, the remake, even though it's closer to the book, that just tells you that the book ending was bad. Because it's terrible.
It is truly, I sat there and I went, wait, what are we doing?
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, what is happening?
No. And well, it's kind of got two endings, right? You find out about the ship, and you sort of find out that he's still on Earth. Sort of the way that they do it there, it's very, clunky. And then, of course, the whole, monkey, Abraham Lincoln sort of thing, which is, and then they never touched that property again because it didn't make any money and it was a bomb.
Yeah.
So
I still think that movie's a little fun, but that's just me.
Oh, Josh.
I know. Tim Roth is great in that movie. I don't care.
He is really good in that movie. So is Paul Giamatti. weirdly enough. He's just like going full ham.
Yep.
Any others you want to mention?
I'd shout out A Simple Favor.
Yeah. Which is Gone Girl Light.
Oh
no, A Simple Favor. I thought you said Simple Life. I'm sorry.
No, the Blake Lively and Andy Kendrick. And I guess in a way, Promising Young Woman, although that always bristles the hair on the back of people's necks when you
it did on mine
talk about it.
And on mine.
Because people have very strong feelings in both directions.
That's what not to do.
I don't know if it's really a twist ending though.
No, it's a more frustrating. Well, we'll do that episode down the road.
I'm not looking at it for your opinion on it. I'm looking at it. Does it fit in the definition of a twist ending? Like
I don't think
this is just like a. Yes, it could have ended this way, but you didn't think it was going to, kind of way, which I think sort of satisfies that.
It's more of a day. I think it's more of like a. This is the problem with that movie, is I have to think about it. I think that the ending itself, like, because we know that it was a little bit of an add-on. We know that it was. I don't know. I wouldn't count that as like a twist ending. Okay. I would have been like, it's a. I hate to say it. It's a little bit of a cop-out ending, to be fair. But
I'm not asking your opinion.
I don't think it's a, but I don't think it's a twist. Like
if it fits into the definition. So
I don't think it's a twist. I mean, Josh, do you think
your opinion's at the door?
Well, was I shocked when it happened? Not really. Like,
okay, yeah. I guess that's kind of where I'm at.
I was kind of like,
that makes sense.
Oh, this seems like part of the whole plan. I did
not see the end of Titanic coming. That was a huge shock. So, spoiler alert: the ship sinks. It was shocking.
To be fair, the best twist ending was the cut where they didn't have that alternative ending for Titanic in there. Jesus, lady. I'll talk about that next week. I think of, a movie that everybody loves. It's like on Sight and Sound now. It's Parasite's got a twist ending. Yeah. It's got a twist and a twist and a twist. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's got a whole second act full of twists.
Them going into the basement is one of the most exhilarating moments that I have ever witnessed in a movie, because I walked into Parasite intentionally not knowing anything about it. Like I knew it was a Bong Joon-ho film, but that was literally it. So when they were going down there, I was like, what is about to happen? Literally anything could happen right now, and it was so exciting.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I did not know anything about it either, and saw it fresh, and I was just stunned.
Yeah, I was like that, like you're mentioning, Josh, that tracking shot, everything down there. It leads to the kick, the kick, and then the head, the sound work, all of it. It's so good.
Oh no, God! I'm just thinking about it, and them just being in the house Oh my God!
But then, like the twist with Bong Joon-ho at the end, where he's the roles are reversed, and he's the one doing Morse code on the outside, and
oh my God! Yeah, see there you go. It should be at the top of our list.
It really should. I know that you could say he's redoing history and all this different stuff, but I would be, if you didn't mention probably what Tarantino's done over the last couple of years in subverting audiences' expectations. But for me personally, Inglourious Bastards was a giant twist when I first saw it, because I did not expect him to end World War II and literally take a machine gun to Hitler at the end of that film. Like I never saw it coming. Now they feel like kind of cheap, or you see them all, sort of coming a mile away because it's sort of his shtick now. But when he first did it with Inglourious Bastards, I don't think audience were really anticipating that he was going to go fully into that realm, because we know how most World War II movies end, but to end it that way was very, very surprising, especially for my audience. My audience went crazy when that happened. They could not see. They were laughing, and it was I
kind of wish that movie had come out like now in the era that we are, with like Nazis in Congress and like Stellamania. I think it would be pretty fascinating to see their idol be, shot to death.
On 4K Blu-ray, you can pick it up at stores. I think we're pretty good. I think The Descent has a pretty good twist.
Yeah, that's on my list. Yeah.
I love that movie so much.
Fuck yeah.
The great thing of just in general about that movie, what I love about it so much is that if you were to take out the horror element of it, it would still just be so riveting. Like just as a survival movie, I get into it just for that. And then like at a certain point, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. There's monsters in here. But it was just about them trying to get out of this mountain. I've been fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I guess we should probably say something like Friday the 13th because as the original like horror twist. Really everything kind of has just happened as a result of that. I mean, yes, obviously there were horror movies before that.
Yeah, like Saw doesn't happen without Friday.
Yeah, Saw and Scream and all of these happen because of Friday the 13th's choice to really surprise you at the end.
Yeah. I feel like also too, like the good ones are like detective stories too. Like you think of like,
well, they just kind of lend themselves to
like, you know, you don't see who's coming, like, you know, a murder mystery or, you know, just a straight up detective film. Like I think a Gone Baby Gone is a perfect example. Like I did not see Morgan Freeman being the person that took the little girl.
The only thing I remember and think about when I think of that movie is
here we go.
Amy, what's her face, saying this car smells like cock.
Amy Ryan.
And I'm like, yeah, I feel that. We've all been there.
Same from a Dennis Lehane film book, but Shutter Island. I know that was like you know, I saw that in theaters. I had read the book.
It's a little clunky though.
It's a little clunky, but I remember reading the book and finishing it like the day I was going to the movies, and then I saw it in the theater, and I remember someone in my audience screaming, "Holy shit, no way!" Like it went like, and people lost. You couldn't hear half the dialogue at the end because people were like losing their minds to it.
Mm.
It doesn't. I think that's a movie though that like, I mean, I like the film. I don't like love it, but for some people, once that twist happens, the recontextualizing of that whole film, it then crumbles on itself. For some people there too. So there is that as well.
It crumbles like Michelle Williams just into ash.
I do want to go back to Nolan real quick because Josh, I recently rewatched Interstellar, and I feel like
his best movie.
I know that I could only speak to Josh this because
His worst movie.
It's not his no, it is not his worst movie.
It's his best movie. It's my favorite.
Not his best movie. It's not his worst movie. It's on the upper tier for me, Josh, on my rankings. It really actually, that movie has like a very weird connection now to like with the end of the world and everything with COVID, and if you watch that movie in a different light now, it's really interesting. But then also too the bookcase, and once you see it now and everything, you see the breadcrumbs sort of leading to that, and some of the messy parts maybe don't, you know, for other people don't work, or the dialogue or whatever. But like the emotionality of that whole through line of the ending of that, for it to work, when I was in theaters the first time, I was like, I wasn't blown away, but I also was just like, oh my God, that's talk about putting yourself in a corner of how you're going to get out of this sort of situation, and finding a emotional way of doing it that connects through the through line of your film too. Sometimes twists can continue the thread of what you've seen before too. So I thought that
I mean, talk about sincerity in filmmaking. Like it's his most sincere movie by far, and that's why I personally really like it. I get that there are issues with it, and even like the twists don't land all that much for me, but the emotion behind it is what I respond to with that film, which you don't get in a ton of other Nolan films, and that's why I do really like it.
Yeah, that's fair. The earnestness is definitely there. I can't wait for the twist ending of Oppenheimer when Barbie shows up.
Ooh, when he drops the bomb on Barbie Land, huh? Yeah, that's gonna be wild.
She's gonna like nope.
No, she just snaps her face. Nope.
She's gonna catch it in her hand and just send it back. Yeah. I do want to do one more shout out, and that is to the series of movies that are Orphan.
Yeah.
Because obviously that first one, iconic, great, love it. But I actually remember watching the second one and thinking like, okay, this is a prequel. The actress is way older.
Mm-hmm.
We already know what supposedly the twist should be. What is this movie going to be? Mm-hmm. And then you get to it, and it's like, oh wow, they actually did it. And they gave Julia Stiles so much to do, and she's great and fun in that movie. And it was like, okay, I walked in kind of doubting that this would actually work, and you know what? They found a way to make it work.
It 100% works. And there is a Sundance movie. I probably shouldn't mention the name in this conversation to give it too much away. That also has a third act twist that is such a left turn.
Oh, you mean from this year?
From this year's Sundance. I just don't want to say it because
didn't we talk about it?
Talked about it.
Didn't we talk about it last week?
I don't know. It might star the supporting actress Oscar winner.
Is it similar to a movie in which the lead actress was also in another twist ending that didn't work?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, I mean, she was with another actress. It was in London.
Well, I think we can keep this one vague since it's a new movie that nobody is outside of Sundance has seen yet.
I mean, we're not saying that. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
It'll be out this year, and we'll talk about it later.
No, I think we did talk about it last week, which is kind of funny that we're dancing around. It's very funny that we're dancing around it.
Well, that's a tease to end it with.
There you go.
I will say, there's a movie with Kevin Costner. I don't know if you guys have seen it. No Way Out. Have you guys seen that movie?
Of course.
Yeah, that movie's twist ending is
Sean
wild.
Young. I mean,
yeah, wild. I love that movie. Old Boy, the original, not the Spike Lee one. Though, if we want to,
Spike Lee one? The Spike Lee never remade Old Boy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
That didn't happen.
Though I will say, Inside Man. Talk about like a crime one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Inside Man though. I get frustrated with the ending to Inside Man though, because there's a sequence of events that I feel like if they had flipped them would have been so much better.
Which events, Josh? You can say we're spoilering. This movie's been out 20 years almost.
Well, you find out that Clive Owen has already left and done the switcheroo with the diamonds before Denzel does. So at that point, it's like, well, why am I still watching the movie? You've already showed me the twist. Why are we still following? The whole point to follow Denzel is to figure out what's happening. We already know what's happening. I didn't like that. I found that to be really baffling that they decided to tell the story that way. But I still found it to be a very entertaining movie.
That movie's fun.
It's just flip those two scenes and it's fine. It was very strange.
That movie has that's how you know your cast is loaded when you have Willem Dafoe just playing a random cop for 10 minutes of your movie or whatnot. It's like Jodie Foster's great in that movie. Mm-hmm. It's taking the sort of heist cop gangster sort of procedural and it really flips it on its head. And one that I do want to mention, we hadn't mentioned this as a horror film, The Mist is
I am mixed on the ending to that movie.
hate that movie so much for what it did in the end. It's such a, not only is Marcia Gay Harden the worst person in the world in that movie, but
she's great.
She's amazing, but it's just also I'm talking about the character. I'm not talking about the woman. That ending is that's the ending that Shyamalan needed for the. No, I'm just kidding. It's a pretty bold.
It is bold. I know people really do like it for that boldness. Yeah. I find it to be overtly bleak without really earning it personally, and that's the reason why I don't really like the ending to The Mist, because yes, it is shocking, but I feel like that's all it really is, and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But a lot of people like it for those reasons. I'm just not one of them.
I just didn't. It's like that one. It's like we had discount Stephen King movies come out for a while. We had The Mist in 1408, if I'm not mistaken, and we had a bunch of those movies come out where it's like, oh no, it's Stephen King. Let's do it. The one stories where his twist ending. Secret Window was another one too with Johnny Depp, and some of them work, some of them don't. All right. I think that's it. No more else. None. Okay. All right.
No.
All right.
That was a lot.
It was a lot.
Named 50 movies.
Cool. So if you've gotten spoiled now, then I just checked off 50 movies off of your watch list, and you don't have to watch them anymore on Letterboxd. All right.
I'm sorry.
All right, Josh, we're gonna get out of here. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on the internet and your work? But Josh, if you can also give us, because this next week, by the time we record, next week we're recording on Monday. So the Super Bowl will be happening. So Josh, between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, can you give us a prediction, but also a hope of what trailer you would love to see for a film to drop during the Super Bowl? Because they always drop during the Super Bowl. What you would like to see a first look at? Yeah.
Well, I'll first say that you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Josh Parham. You can also find a lot of my work in Next Best Picture, and even occasionally over at AwardsWatch too, where there are some written reviews. In terms of the Super Bowl, I don't give a shit.
Good.
So
good. I knew that was coming.
One of the teams will win, and
it's between two teams. Just say either Kansas City or the Eagles.
Don't the Eagles win a lot? Fine, I'll say they'll win. Sure.
There you go. All right.
Go sports team.
There you go.
And yeah, in terms of the trailers, honestly, I don't really know that either of what I would really be anticipating. I'm very much a whatever trailer gets released, I'm fine with. And honestly, if it's for something that I'm really interested in, I usually won't watch the trailer anyway. So
it's fair.
I'd love an extended peek of Barbie, but I feel like that's a ways off. The teaser was great, but I do want to see some more footage from it. But
I want to see some
that would be amazing counter programming.
It really would be. It'd be genius.
Yeah. It would be smart because Oppenheimer's already releasing TV spots. So get that Barbie.
Yeah, and they
stuff
have a full trailer for Oppenheimer already. We only have
two alternate version full trailers already.
Yeah. No, they're going deep. Yeah.
That won't be there.
Yeah, it's gonna make money. Erik.
Yes.
Same questions. Where can they find you? Super Bowl prediction. Hope
you can find me at awardswatch.com, at awards_watch on Twitter. The winner of the Super Bowl will be Rihanna.
There you go.
And
the correct answer
that I am looking for, which I know wouldn't happen, would be like Killers of the Flower Moon or Napoleon or something like that. I want something, but they would never do that for the Super Bowl.
Well, didn't they do like the tease for The Irishman during the Super Bowl one year?
That was the Oscars.
Was that the Oscars? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
That was during the Oscars.
It's a different Super Bowl.
It's our Super Bowl. You used to not be able to show any movie trailers during the Oscars if there was like somebody nominated.
They need that money.
The rules were very strict.
Yeah. I am on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. You can find my work here at AwardsWatch, Playlist and Session Film Speak, all of the different places. Super Bowl. I've been Erik's a big football fan. He clearly has said it the last couple of weeks.
Joe Burrow is not in the Super Bowl, so I will not be watching.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. If he was, it would have been really perfect if you had Joe Burrow and the 49ers, because it would have been San Francisco versus Joe Burrow, but that didn't happen. It was Kansas City and the Eagles. I'm gonna pick the Eagles because I usually what I pick doesn't work out. So I'm gonna pick the Eagles, but I'm rooting for Kansas City, and because I'm rooting for Patrick Mahomes, and for a trailer hope. Obviously we're gonna get probably like the new Fast and Furious movie. That's like not even a question. I would love to see Barbie. I would love to see. I know it's not going to happen. I'd love to see Iron Claw just because it would make sense with sports theme. But that's just giving my hopes up. Warner Brothers is probably going to release a Flash trailer in the middle of the Super Bowl, that'll be that's conversation with your family about that.
I've been hearing them testing that trailer anyway, so it does feel like they got one in the can that they're waiting.
Yeah, they're dipping their toes into the water for sure on that thing. I would love to see Netflix drop one for The Killer because they do have a date for it, and I would love to see Michael Fassbender playing an assassin more. I'd love to see that. That would be the one that I'd love to see somehow if Ferrari also got a first look, but that's not going to happen either. But it's probably going to just be big budget action films and probably another big look at John Wick Chapter 4, which I'm really looking forward to. Can't wait for that and everything. But yeah, so and yes, I can't wait to see Rihanna. And I'm not going to pressure her into any new music because that's not right. So that's going to do it for this week's show. Next week, we will be back. We're going to be doing something different next week. So just for everybody out there, we're going to be doing sort of a retrospective look on an Oscar year. And we're going to test the waters out. We're going to see how it works out, see if you guys like it or not.
Speak.
What?
So to speak. You said test the waters.
Yeah, we're going to test the waters, so to speak, because of the fact that we're going to be talking about Titanic. It's releasing in theaters for the 25th anniversary.
You got to say like Sean Connery announcing Best Picture. Titanic!
Yes. Yeah, we're going to test Titanic at the movie. But
him and Elizabeth Taylor should have been able to announce.
Yes.
And the award goes to Catherine.
I will hate him for the end of my time on Earth for that.
Why?
Because I just hate that he did it.
Nobody knows.
Kathy Bates was like so confused. Oh,
why? Because no one's called her Catherine Bates for years. You know what I mean?
Not your mouth.
Everyone's called her Kathy, and she's like, "I thought I won." I'm like, "Really, lady?" It's literally Kathy Bates up there when they announced you. Get over yourself. Anyway, we're gonna be doing 1998 Oscars next week. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But until then, we will see you all next time.